Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Bring It Back. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that were canceled and or short-lived that I would like to see get brought back in some shape or form. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the USA Network original series, Dare Me. Really quickly, if you're unfamiliar with Dare Me is, the best way I kind of put it, describe it as, is kind of like if you took Bring It On, but made it, I guess coming of age might be, coming of age might be kind of what Bring It On is. I'm not that... It's like a darker Bring It On. It's kind of basically about, it focuses on basically like three main characters, Addie, Beth, and Colette. Like Addie and Beth are like high schoolers, or part of the cheerleading squad. They're kind of like Beth is kind of like the queen bee, and Addie's kind of almost like her right hand, but it's almost just like how vicious, like, you know, being top dog and all of that can be. I mean, obviously you're high schoolers and like how mean in general high schoolers can be, but it's almost just kind of like everyday life, because each one of them's kind of got, especially Beth definitely got some like major family issues. But then like this, it's their squad, in particular it's Beth's squad. She's top dog and everything until they get a new coach, Colette, who's kind of young and upcoming. Obviously she's worked at other places and got teams to like nationals and pretty big cheerleading events, and obviously it leads to a lot of animosity between Beth and Colette, because obviously Addie and Colette are kind of hitting it off, and so obviously Beth feels like she's kind of losing her way, and like Beth can be very like self-destructive, very possessive. She wants Addie to be hers and no one else's. It's very like teen drama in that part, but obviously like I said, it's like Bring It On, but if you add like a darker twist to it, and then the darker twist to it is like obviously like things start falling apart in like different people's lives, like their relationships get complicated because Colette's having an affair with this military dude named Will, and then obviously that has an effect on her marriage because she has a baby at the same time, and Addie gets mixed up in all of that, and obviously like I said, Beth's going through her complicated stuff because stuff happens to her. It's a very dark story, but it told this very like intriguing tale, because there is a bit of a mystery element to it, because I don't want to go too deep into it, but there is stuff that goes down that creates this mystery of like, okay, well, you know, I'll go ahead and say it turns into a whodunit, because basically there's a murder that takes place. I won't specify who, but now it becomes a thing of like, well, who was involved? And season 1 ends off on such a good cliffhanger that you're like, oh my god, where does this story go from here? Like, because the way season 1 is structured, like I would be so curious like how they would have structured season 2, because I feel like season 1 definitely wouldn't have the same feel and vibe to it. I mean, it would still have the same tone and everything, but I feel like the way they would go about telling the story would be different, because a lot of it is told from Addie's perspective, in the sense that like there's voiceover of her taking the lessons she learned from Colette and applying them. And it's like, you know, it's kind of, once it's that storytelling device of like you have future perspective looking back, and I'm so curious like where the story would have gone. Sadly, the show was canceled after 1 season, which I only recently found out about, because I have to remind myself every once in a while, like, oh yeah, a show I wasn't sure whether or not it got renewed or not, I need to check back in, and sadly it turned out it wasn't renewed. But this show, I would love to see. This show needs a second season, because obviously, like I had lengthy conversations with people about the season 1 finale. It's one of those shows that I review where people hit me up like their thoughts about it and stuff like that. It's like the biggest like back and forth I've had with people about like their thoughts about it and everything too. So like this is that show that just makes you go like, oh my god, give me a season 2. I need to see where this show goes, because the show is based on a book. I don't think the book has the same name. I don't think it's called Dare Me. I could be mistaken, but I do know it's based on a book. So, and I looked into it a tiny bit, but like what story they told in the first season isn't the entirety of the book, so there definitely is plenty of story to tell. So for me, I'd want the show to come back, you know, season 2 or 3, like however long it takes to tell the full scope of the story, you know, whether it be like 3 or 4 seasons, whatever the case may be. I just want this full story, you know, explode, you know, because like this is like, I've never read the book it's based on. I'm not much of a book reader, but I'd be interested, like you know, now that I've got introduced to this story live action wise, I'd love to see it get concluded. Like whether that is like, hey, they're able to finish it in a second season, or whether they need to go 3 or 4. Like I said, like however long it takes to tell this whole complete story, I'm down for the ride, because I think it's such an interesting story, because it's like, for one, I think it's a very interesting take on like, you know, a view into that world of, like I said, the competitiveness of it, because not only are you just competitive, we're talking about teenagers being competitive, and just like what teenagers get up to, like the dark side of that, which involves sex and drugs, and you're just like, as an adult, you're like, Jesus, like don't tell me like teenage girls really get up to this shit. That's depressing, that, you know, to think about. But I think it's an interesting and, like I said, dark look into like, you know, I think, and truth be told, is because it's a very I mean, maybe someone would be like, "Oh, you think this is grounded?" Whatever the case may be, it seems like a very dark and grounded story. But I would love to see more of the show. So I would love the show to get a second life. The show is technically a 2019 show, but that's only because the show literally premiered I think the 29th of December, so it's more so a 2020 show, so it's not like it's been that long. We're still in 2020 currently, to many people's chagrin, I'm sure, but it's still relatively enough for some of the network to pick it up. So I'd hope some other streaming, a streaming service like a Netflix or a Hulu, whoever. I want someone to pick this show up so we can get, like I said, not just one season, maybe 2 or 3. Once again, if they're able to finish this story in one extra season, I'm down for it. It's one of those shows where I'm like, it's not going to have a happy ending. Just with the complicated nature of just everyone's intertwined lines, I'm like, I don't think the show would have a nice ending. Once again, the story already exists in a book. I am curious to know how much they might have changed from book to the TV show. Maybe there wasn't much changed at all. Maybe it was a very faithful adaptation. Anyway, like I said, I just want the story to be fully, told. So like I said, fingers crossed, hoping that the show does get a second life, so we'll just, keep an eye out to see if that becomes a reality or not. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest. Enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.